Afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. And what we're going to talk about today in our Materia Medica series is the downy rattlesnake plantain, which is actually a woodland orchid. Again, I want to show you a few of the more obscure woodland plants that are usable for medicines as well. Stay with me. We'll take a look at this thing up close. Okay, so this guy is really well hidden here because it grows really close to the forest floor. If you look down here, we can see the leaves coming up, and there's another smaller one coming up here. And here is the actual orchid stalk, the flower stalk of the orchid coming up here. And this is rattlesnake plantain. So let's take a really close look at this and we'll talk about it. Okay, again, just to give you kind of a size comparison, let me zoom out first and then zoom back in. I've moved the debris out of the way. And the way I saw it was that flowered stalk coming up. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have seen it walking through the woods. So we'll get close up on it here so you can see it better. And then we'll talk about it. Now, let's talk about a couple things. Before we get into the medicinal portions of this thing, let's talk a little bit about this rattlesnake plantain. First of all, it's called rattlesnake plantain, but it's not actually a plantain. It is a woodland orchid. It's not in the Plantago family at all. It is an orchid. If you look at it, the reason it's probably got the name rattlesnake plantain goes back to the doctrine of signatures, and it looks like snake skin. So probably it was thought to be good for snake bites and have the same drawing properties as Plantago major or plantain, which we'll talk about in another video. But if you look at it from a different perspective in doctrine of signatures, it also looks a little bit like membrane. And that is what the plant is good for medicinally. It is a demulcent which acts directly with the mucous membranes. It's good for dry, irritated membranes like in the throat and in the nasal cavity and things like that, because it is mucilaginous to soothe irritation. So what I would do with a plant like this is I would use this plant in a infusion with very little liquid, and I would probably use it for a gargle for a sore throat, and then I would drink that infusion to help ease an irritated type cough. They say that this plant is rare. In this part of Ohio, it's not rare. This is the only one I've found in the last couple hundred yards, but there are places out here where I've seen dozens and dozens of these in a very small area. And it doesn't take a lot of this plant to make the medicine. You could take 2 or 3 leaves off of this plant, mix it with a very small amount of water in an infusion, and use that to coat the back of your throat and things like that for a dry, irritated cough or a sore throat, and that would probably fix the issue. So you don't have to harvest the whole plant. You can just take a couple leaves off of several plants and use that to make your medicine with if you're worried about over harvesting. Well guys, this is just a really quick video on downy rattlesnake plantain. I'm not going to harvest the plant because I don't need to use it right now. And it is a plant that's considered something you shouldn't harvest. Again, we're talking about emergency scenarios and what we can use out of the woodland areas to effectively treat ailments. This plant is very good for things in your nose and throat area where you have irritation and mucous membrane, and I would not hesitate to harvest it in an emergency. But it's not something that I would harvest readily for use all the time, because there are other plants that will do similar things to this plant. But sometimes the best plant for the job is the plant you have. And if you have that condition and you find this plant and it's an emergency, use the plant. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.